Hey, Nunzio, welcome to That Will Never Work. I'm excited. We're kind of turning the tables. I think the last time we actually spoke in person, you had me as a guest on your podcast. So I hope you treated me well because I remembered, and now it's my chance to turn the tables on you. But I actually am kind of interested in chatting with you today because actually you're a bit more established than most of the entrepreneurs that I do speak to. So I think as a way to kind of kick things off, I'd love for you to take just a moment and kind of talk about what you're doing now. What is the problem that you're solving? And then you can kind of naturally, using your podcasting skills, lead right into what it is you might want to chat about today.
No, for sure. And thank you so much for having me, Mark. And you're absolutely right. We chatted almost a year ago. And ever since then, been following what you're doing and love the advice you give entrepreneurs and startups. But you're right. We've been around for 8 years. But I think one thing one thing that aligns with maybe other people on the podcast is we're constantly reinventing ourselves, so we kind of see ourselves as always in startup phase as we're continuing to grow and find better ways to service our audience. But I could give a quick overview of what we did and or how we started and where we're planning to go. So in 2012, I had a business myself while I was attending university, and I was looking to sell it, but I was hit with many barriers. Brokers thought we were too small. Realtors would tell me that they rather sell a house, and the overall user experience on the internet in 2012 just didn't give me the confidence I needed. So I did some searching and I noticed there was great global trends. The first thing I noticed that many people were already thinking of moving away from their 9 to 5 to be their own boss. A ton of baby boomers were in the pipeline looking to exit and retire. There was also this increased confidence in franchising, and foreign investors always looking for business opportunities in North America for immigration reasons. So I told myself back then, I set out a goal to create a seamless, supportive, and resourceful community where people can buy and sell businesses in the micro market. And we define that as anyone looking to sell a business under 5 million. With that said, we launched in 2014. And since then, we've facilitated over $2 billion in transactions, and we've grown to a community of over 40,000. And as an organization, I think, one thing that we're very loud about on social media and on our marketing campaigns is we're driven to really empower people to love what they do, ensuring they can live their life on their own terms, and they can build a better future and stronger economy. And we're big believers that that's possible through business ownership. And we also acknowledge that not everyone could start a business, but there are many that could buy and grow one. And why I say that, I could probably align with many others that have been on the podcast is because we're currently in an expansion stage right now. We're reinventing ourselves and sort of starting all over. And we're aiming to become more than just a listing platform. We're looking to develop now a selling tool that will actually digitize, streamline, and automate the entire buy and sell experience for our buyers and sellers. So we're trying to be we're trying to be more than just a matchmaker. So it's a very transformative moment for us. Rather than providing a platform that is mostly targeted at brokers. Our new tool, gives us a way to offer services to entrepreneurs and small business owners directly. Those entrepreneurs and small business owners that really don't require the one-on-one attention and expertise of a broker, but still require some more guidance to them if they were, if they were going to sell their business privately. So it's a new niche for us, and we're super excited.
So
So
let me make sure I understand this. So,
yeah,
because I think there's a picture developing in my head. I want to make sure I have this right. So previously,
sure.
you were much more of, like you said, just a matching service where people could come and list businesses, but the people listing it was usually not the business owner, but was in fact a business sales broker. Is that? And then
Exactly.
people who wanted to buy it would come there, get connected. In other words, in essence, if I can use an analogy, you were a place where real estate companies could list their current listings for sale. But if you wanted one of those houses, you couldn't just buy it from you. You would then contact that real estate company who would then get an agent
Exactly.
involved, and you have the whole rigmarole. So you were just making a connection,
Exactly. Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned that you were aiming to basically focus on the market of under $5 million for sale businesses. In fact, is that
Yeah.
what is the current market? Is that what your most of the transactions are for businesses of that size?
Exactly. Those are the businesses that, in my opinion, create the backbone of our economies. They're the most difficult businesses to sell because most are not prepared or organized. So we really see ourselves as playing in this niche market where we can really help guide them, prepare them, and get them connected with the right buyers. And a lot of those small, businesses are simply ignored from brokers, and we're trying to be more than just this matchmaker. We're going to digitize that experience for them and save them money as well along the way.
So the
Um,
reason that
yeah,
you think you want to step in and actually become, in some ways, the broker yourself is there's a couple of different things you threw out there. Is the driving one? One is they don't get the companies don't get served very well by a broker. But maybe back up a second. What's the revenue? What's the commission?
yeah. So generally, brokers will charge anywhere from 8 to 12% on the sale of the business. Um, And when you step back, you think about these micro businesses and these small mom and pop shops that are looking to sell, they're using that to fund their retirement. So that's a blow to the pocket. And we're trying to address that as well. Like, how can we create an experience in a marketplace that automates the experience, digitize it, provides them with, the resources needed to exit, save money, and start the next chapter of
I
their
know. I'm
life.
just trying to drill into what is the motivation for someone wanting for you trying to use a ridiculous word, disintermediate between the
Yeah.
brokers and the customers. And it sounds like a few of them that you rattled off. One is uh, because those are even though it's pretty big, $400,000 or $500,000 commission, it's pretty big. For a broker, it's small. In other words, they'd rather spend their time
Yes.
selling a $25 million business than selling a $4 million business. The second, so they don't get very much attention. The second one, it sounds like, is even though it's 8 to 10% for someone who is that's their entire nest egg, a $400,000 commission is a lot of money, and they'd rather keep a bigger piece of that for themselves. And I guess fundamentally, you believe you can probably do a better job than even the broker who's trying hard because of all the digital tools. In other words, it's not just a
Espe-
focus thing for the brokers. It's that they're old fashioned. These are guys named Leo in
yeah.
in a second floor office, kind of using the telephone and chewing on a cigar. That's kind of how I picture this.
It, exactly, and we're leveraging strong technology, like I said, to really streamline that entire experience. Moving forward, there's a lot of small business owners in the micro market that are using, strong technology and integrated platforms where they could simply integrate with our dashboard and they could quickly be transparent on the health of their business. For example, they have integrations with Stripe or PayPal, and that could quickly provide the financial health to that buyer instead of going through a broker, figuring out what this business is worth, et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of technologies that we're leaning on that can make it more realistic for a small business owner to leverage a platform like us in the micro market. And we're going to do that all through our dashboard through, we call it a chat box that really consolidates and makes everything transparent. So imagine, this one-on-one chat box where you're able to have that conversation, send the appropriate documents, organize the entire deal flow and due diligence in one consolidated area versus having multiple partners and parties involved.
And it sounds like you've probably sold over time four, five, 600 businesses. So a pretty good track record. You've seen what happens here.
Yeah.
And how do you make money in the existing model?
And that's why we're constantly, like I said before, that's why we're reinventing ourselves. Right now, our current model isn't scalable. We have a listing term; it's a flat fee to list your business on our site, and we connect you with potential buyers, and that's it. It's only $150 for 3 months of promotion. And then we also have a subscription model for our brokers that give them unlimited listings and leads. But for the amount of work that we're putting in on the back end, it's just not a lucrative and scalable model. So what we want to do is we want to deepen our relationship with the business owners and entrepreneurs directly. We want to deepen our technology and the experience for them, and then get involved in a more scalable model where we're going to take. It's basically going to be a take rate model where we can make a lot more money off the success of a listing rather than saying, "Hey, seller, you need to pay us X dollars in order to have a listing live." Now we're going to say, "Hey, you can list your business for free, but based on success and based on you using our technology, we're going to set you up for
So,
success. We're going to
Gene
take it at the
Nunzio,
end."
this sounds suspiciously like the exact same pitch the broker would be making.
Exactly. The difference is we're not going to be charging 8 to 12%. We're going to use technology. We're going to use the fact that we're automating the entire experience. So we're going to be saving them a lot. Our commissions are going to be as low as 1% versus a broker that could potentially be charging as high as 12%.
Wow. So that's a pretty remarkably large reduction. I mean, taking it from eight,
Yeah.
10% down to 1%, it would seem like people would flock to you for that. But I guess ultimately, what does the broker think they deliver that makes it worth 10%? Is there a lot of services above and beyond the fact that they actually find a buyer for you? Or is this entirely a matching
It,
thing
it,
from their perspective too?
It depends, because usually when we have conversations with small business owners, a lot of them have what we like to call an acquisition team on hand. They have their accountant, they have their banker, and they have their lawyer, and most of those professionals can help guide the deal for them. So most brokers, in my opinion, they're extremely valuable on bigger, more complicated deals, and those deals happen north of 5 million. Complicated deals that need confidentiality, that require deep negotiation, that require very difficult valuations. So I would say that's the space where a broker is extremely valuable. But in the micro market, like I said, it's sort of overkill, and it's overkill to the point where a lot of these brokers would rather say, we're not going to service you, or we'll service you, but we're just going to slap your listing on buyandsellbusiness.com. So we're kind of doing the work for them already. So now we're saying we want to move that relationship directly to the small business
So,
owner.
what do you want to chat about today?
Well, yeah, I think we laid it out pretty well. I think my main question is, we're worried. We're still worried about our existing client base, and mostly brokers, like we've been talking about. I'm We're worried about how they're going to react to this product expansion. We're worried that they might feel like our new offering is cutting them out. Um, like I said, we're still going to be offering our platform and supporting them, but our new offering, is going to be just targeting a really niche subset of entrepreneurs and small business owners that aren't a fit for brokers. But we're still sort of unsure how that's going to land with them. So I guess the main question is, I'm wondering whether you've ever been in a situation where you've risked alienating one target market of your business by trying something new, and how did you manage that?
Well, the first thing is that there is no magic bullet here. Uh, as I was listening, it was becoming pretty clear to me that essentially you are taking what the business you used to give very politely to the brokers for the simple listing fee, and you're saying I want to take that for myself.
Mhm.
And perhaps the only consolation is you're giving these assurances that I'm only intending to take the small guys, the ones that you don't want anyway. Um, and I guess the big question here is how dependent really are you on these brokers? And there could be two ways that, in fact, you're dependent on them. But the big one is what percentages of the listings that are on the site are placed there by the brokers? Is that the majority of the content, or is that a small percentage of the content?
I would say it's a pretty even split. I would say we're seeing, we're probably seeing, 30 to 40% of the listings being generated from brokers using us as a marketing tool. And then we're seeing listings from other professionals such as franchisors and accountants. And then we're also seeing listings directly from small business owners. So they do still generate a substantial amount of listings for us. It's just the model isn't scalable, obviously.
Yeah, and listen, this is such a classic innovator's dilemma issue, which is you can
Yeah.
clearly see the direction you have to go to take the business to the next level, but you recognize that by taking it to the next level, you risk losing uh, your existing model. Um, so, have I seen this before? God, a million times. But I've seen it done successfully very infrequently. Not because it's
Mhm.
not possible to do it, but because it's very scary. Because it really
Yeah.
there is no magic way to say I want to do something which fundamentally is going to compete with my customers and keep them at the same time. You may be looking for something that fundamentally doesn't exist. I'm not to say there aren't possibly ways to do it, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. But just to give some examples of things that I have seen over and over again, and certainly one of the classic ones was Blockbuster, which I was on the other side of. I was the little upstart who was coming after them. And it was grossly disproportionate in terms of size and scale. I mean, at the very beginning, Netflix was tiny. We were doing, $4 or $5 million in business at one point, and Blockbuster was doing $6 billion. Um, but that was right around the point where they began to recognize that video rental by mail, because for those people who don't know, wasn't streaming then; it was all mailing DVDs to people. Um, Blockbuster absolutely recognized that this was a viable category, that this was going to be a very viable way that people would eventually consume movies. And more fundamentally, this was a better entree to the streaming world than converting people from going to the store to streaming. Um, and I know this because I've now spoken to lots and lots of Blockbuster executives who have kind of told me they saw this coming. But they were in the exact same position that you were, is they would say to themselves, we really should launch an online division, which rents DVDs by mail, which means that we now are going to be selling directly, renting directly in basically every single zip code in the United States. And well, wouldn't you know, we also happen to have stores in just about every single zip code in the United States. And even worse, a lot of those stores aren't owned by us, they're owned by franchisees. And at the very hint that Blockbuster might start going direct, and by definition, taking business out of the pocket of someone in their division, in that geography, those people would raise bloody hell. And they'd say, you can't do that. You are, quote unquote, you're competing with us.
Mhm.
And this happened over and over again. It wasn't just a question also of the pushback they would get from the stores and the pushback they get from the franchisees. They would always say to themselves, it's a tiny piece of the business. Why would we allocate resources? Why would we take our very best people off of this part of the business, which makes $6 billion a year, and allocate our best people to something which in a good year is going to be 10 or 15 million? So they never did anything. They didn't have the courage to actually realize this is the future. And if we don't do it, then we're going to let someone else get stronger and stronger and stronger, which of course is what Netflix did. I have another example, and this is a client that I worked for who I'll remain nameless, but they were a large manufacturing company. And the product that they had was the number one product in that category. It was a brand name that you would absolutely recognize. And they sold it the classic way. They would manufacture it, and then they would sell it to distributors, and the distributors would sell it to their sold through hardware stores, and then the hardware stores would sell it to the consumer. And everybody was happy until someone came out with a product which was similar, like in your case, similar, but was much cheaper because they were selling direct to consumer. And of course, the people running this big manufacturing company weren't stupid, and they saw where this was going and said, this is great. All we have to do, we'll launch a direct to consumer division, and with our more powerful brand name, with our more powerful resources, with our money, we'll shut this down before it gets any traction. And they announced plans to have a direct to consumer business, and all hell broke loose. I mean, their $500,000 a year salespeople said, how dare you sell direct? You're making my job harder. Well, I'm going to quit. And then the distributors would say, oh, you're going to compete with me. All right, I'm going to drop you. And then, of course, the hardware stores would go, why should we carry this product when you're also selling it and you're competing with me? And they abandoned the plans. And I know where that one's going to end, is that the competitors are going to get stronger and stronger and stronger, and they see what they need to do, but they don't have the courage to do it. So fundamentally, Nunzio, in my opinion, for you, it's going to come down to largely how confident are you in what you're doing, how much courage do you have, and how can you do your best to mitigate the damage, not is there a way to avoid the damage? Because I fundamentally believe there's no way to avoid the damage. With the acknowledgement, I don't understand the nuances, but you are absolutely going to do something that you in the past have been very happily passing over to your brokers to handle, for which they go, well, thank you very much. Here's $150. And now we're going to make $400,000 from this guy. And of course they're going to love that. And of course, a lot of them are going to say things like, why am I going to give you $150 why am I going to put my listings there when you're just going to steal them from me? And they would be, in my opinion, perfectly entitled to say that. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. This is the fundamental moment of truth for an entrepreneur, is where you get to this point and you can clearly see what it requires to take the business to the next level. And it's going to require this element of risk. You're going to have to, I was going to use the word crossing the chasm, but in marketing terms, it means something else. But you're going to have to march through this valley of death to get to the other side. But that said, you are going to come at this with overwhelming force. This is not like saying, oh, this is awesome. They charge 9%. I can do it for 8.5%. No, you're going to go, Mr. and Mrs. Business Owner, you used to pay $400,000 to sell your $5 million business. I'm going to sell it for $40,000. That's $2,000 extra in your pocket. And you're going to say, before, when these guys required you to put together all these long ledgers and P&Ls, and I can do that automatically for you using my technology. And where they're requiring you to get a fancy lawyer and you're going to have to get negotiations and we're going to have these contracts. No, we have a standard form which we use, which for a $5 million business is more than adequate. I can make this quick, cheap, simple, easy. And the other thing is once you're in that business, once you begin getting your foot in the door with, you become the broker and you are using it, this technology to power this thing, there's a million different directions you can go. If you look at what's happening in real estate tech right now, and all the new models people are coming up with of ways to buy and sell real estate, you just slipstream right behind that and you jump way past Leo and his cigars and his telephone, because you're willing to do things that are much more dramatic. I mean, if you look at those new innovations in real estate, the cooler ones are the companies who go, I'm going to buy your house. If I can't sell your house in the X months, I'm going to buy it from you. And I'll sell it. I mean, a business is different because it requires that ongoing continuity. But I'm saying there's all kinds of interesting things here. Sometimes, Nunzio, you're just going to have to do it. And I would encourage you to have the courage to do it. That said, you're going to lose people. And so if your definition of making this transition is it's got to be seamless, I can't have a downtick in my revenue, well, don't bother then. Just keep on getting better and better at your advertising-based model. What you want to do is hold on to as much as you can for as long as you can. And it might be that you have to begin building a Chinese wall and say, for the listings that you put in, I don't touch those. Or you do that strange thing where you say, you get commissioned anyway. In other words, I'll do it as a courtesy. I mean, I guess that doesn't work because you have the 1% versus 10%, but it's looking for some way for you to hold on to them as best you can, even though it may mean the business model doesn't work in the short term, but it's buying yourself time to get some traction. And I think you said, I'm not sure whether you said, gave me a percentage, but you want to now focus your resources on the listings that come to you directly. Because there's two levels of competition. One is they pay you the 150. They now list Marianne's ice cream store for sale. And they go, that we found that client and I don't want you, that's not yours. And in some ways they're right. So you may have to say, no, for your listings, I can't touch those. Which means you just begin focusing on having this division and finding some arbitrary division. And it could be you use an economic line. You go 4 million and above, 4 million and below, or some other weird dynamic you can to say, I need to nurture this one category of the ones that I'm the broker of record for.
Yeah, and Mark, what we're doing as well is we're trying to implement creative mechanisms. So for example, say there's a listing that was posted from a broker, that listing will have a call to action that says initiate contact. So that's an introduction. We're not getting involved. But say there's a listing that was created directly from the small business owner, that call to action is going to say make an offer. So we're trying to differentiate in that way. So you're absolutely right. But, one thing that, keeps me up at night is, brokers and realtors are already by nature very competitive. So it's going to be a scary and exciting journey for us. But I think it's, like you said, it's a necessary journey, and we're, we want to make this bold bet to move away from, our current model and really dive deep on the full service subscription model. And we're betting on the future. And I think the fact that more and more entrepreneurs and small business owners, especially in the micro market, are becoming more and more comfortable doing deals online while having, the right tech and right tools to get it done right. Will create a perfect environment for, our solution to really take off.
Yeah, I just think it sounds like the time is right for that business like yours to be basically hands off, fully automated. I mean, for the most part.
Yeah.
And if you lose the broker business, it might even be better, because then actually you can compete with them without having to worry about insulting anybody. You can just go after those listings yourself, because then you can go to the locations where they're already advertising businesses for sale, and you can call up those companies directly and say, hey, listen, if you don't get the results you're looking for, or whatever you've contractually obligated to have the listing for, you can put it on ours for this 1%.
Sure.
And
the truth is too, Mark, many of these brokers and professionals, they're not even, thinking or even touching SaaS and e-commerce opportunities, right? They're very, focused on traditional brick and mortar deals. We're positioned obviously to service both now. So we could potentially even be seeing, more uptick from SaaS and e-commerce opportunities, those types of businesses that want to exit using, familiar technology.
I was just thinking of something. What would happen if you shifted your model right now to, rather than charging $150, whatever your listing fees are for your brokers, if you change to a success model for them?
That's another thing that we've considered. But once again, it's the whole nature of that profession. They're very competitive, and rarely will they want to cooperate on sharing their commissions. Very rarely.
True, but it might be just a way to say you can keep listing with us, and now you pay nothing for the listing, and everything looks the same, which is they all say make an offer, and if they click through on one of yours and it actually sells, you owe us 1% of your 10%, which, certainly in the real estate business, which I know a hell of a lot more about than buy and sell $5 million businesses, there's if you have a customer and you say, I'm going to send that customer to another city, there's a revenue share and it's way more than 10% of the commission. I mean, so there are ways, so them sharing 10% of the commission with you may fly, or I'm not saying it's going to solve the problem, but it may mitigate the damage and that you may find someone. In particular, someone, for example, a franchise model who is selling lots of business, who basically says, I have 100 of these to sell. And if I kick these guys in for 1%, that CAC is way lower than what I would do probably trying to sell it on my own, or it's just one more channel they're using to try and sell franchise.
Yeah, that's great feedback.
Well,
And I think, yeah, your narrative is, mitigate the damage. And I think that's a good approach.
The last thing, you started off by wondering if I had experience doing this. And the one that I think back to is also a Netflix story. And at the very beginning of Netflix, when we were trying to do DVD rental, when there basically were no DVD players out there, the clever solution we came up with was partnering with the DVD player manufacturers, which meant that I had to go and spend months in New Jersey, in suburban New Jersey, trying to get these big, conservative, massive consumer electronics company to do a deal with this ridiculous startup doing DVD rental by mail in California. But I eventually did it, and I had convinced pretty much every single player manufacturer to put a coupon in for anywhere from 3 to 10 free rentals. And it had taken me months to get those deals. And one of the reasons it was so difficult to get them was because the supply chain is so long that it wasn't like they could just slap it on. No, it had to go into the bill of materials, which is owned by some product manager in Korea or Japan, or pick where the manufacturer was, which means they had to figure it out like months and months and months in advance. They had to get the cards all warehoused, then they had to be assembled, then they had to be shrink wrapped, then they had to be put on a boat and a container shipped over here and then distributed. It was a nightmare. And the reason I'm telling you what a nightmare it was is in fall of 1999, a year and a half in, we finally stumbled on the business model that actually was repeatable and scalable, which was subscription. And it was crushing it. It was doing so well. And the problem is 95% of the customers coming in the door were coming in asking for their 3 free rentals, or their 5 free rentals, or their 10 free rentals. And we didn't want to give them 3 free rentals or 5 free rentals or 10 free rentals. We wanted to give them this no due dates, no late fees subscription business. And we had to basically say to a customer, when you come in, no, you're not getting 3 free rentals. You're getting a month of free rentals. And then automatically you're being rolled over to a second month. And we're asking for a credit card up front. And I was terrified that Sony, Panasonic, Toshiba, Samsung, Sharp, you name it, would basically hunt me down and kill me for having gotten them to agree to convince 1 million people in this conservative, slow-moving company to do something. And now all of a sudden I was going to change the deal. I was going to bait and switch the customers. And I just had to do it. And I had to risk the fact that they would all be pissed.
Yeah.
And it was really an incredibly hard decision for me. But lo and behold, it was the right one, because we had
the right
to.
one.
The free rental business was not working.
Yeah.
I mean, they come in, they take their 3 free rentals, and then that's the last you'd see of them. And this is what I had to do.
Yeah. And that's where I draw a lot of my inspiration, Mark. I draw a lot of inspiration from that. When I read your book, I read that part of your book, and I think you were mentioning something about you knew that the subscription was the future, and there was no point in continuing to work in an a la carte past. So you had to have this willingness to abandon parts of your past in service of the future. And when I read that, that's where I was like, wow, okay, this is exactly where I'm at right now. It's scary, it's exciting, but it's something that
Yes, it's
I
the same
truly
thing as
believe
walking
in,
away from
right?
selling DVDs to focus on renting them. It's the same thing of saying we're not going to spend any time and attention
Yeah.
on renting DVDs in service of streaming. It's saying we're going to be totally willing to walk away from all of our deals we have for someone else's content to make our own. It's this willingness to walk away from what you've built to do what you know is right, even though the short-term consequences may be severe. In the long term, you have to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And it gets harder and harder the more successful you are. So Nunzio, I expect you to come back in a year and a half or so and say, oh my God, this 10x the business, but now I've got to pivot again. Now it's really scary. Okay. Well,
That's a
this was
plan,
great
Mark.
catching
That's a
up and
plan.
really cool to hear what you're working on. And I think what this next 6-12 months is going to bring is going to be exciting. So I'm serious. Maybe don't wait a year and a half until you've 10x the business, but maybe we check in again in 6-9 months and let me know whether you're now in hiding under an assumed name because the brokers are coming after you or not.
Absolutely, Mark. I'll
Yeah,
definitely
I'll do
reach
what I
out for
can.
protection
All
from
right.
you.
Many thanks, Nunzio.
Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate it.